Hey everybody, Coach here. Hey, welcome to this week's podcast. Continuing in our Landscape Frustrations series, we're diving off into one, maybe two, depending on the length, another element of landscape frustration that a lot of DIYers get into. And this particular one is one where I have seen more hands thrown up in the air and say, I give up, than any other ones. More than lawns, more than anything else that we're going to cover in this frustration series. But hey, if you get a chance, jump on over to youryardcoach.com and check out the website. Several things that might help you alleviate any frustrations that you might have or have had or may think you have this year when it comes to your landscape as it is or as you want it to be. Check it out if you get a chance. Hey, this week we're covering a biggie. This is one that's very near and dear to my heart because there were many customers over the years that had thrown up their arms in the air and made the phone call, shall we say, and ended up doing business with these folks. We're talking about landscape makeover frustrations, that yard renovation that people think, with a capital T, think that they can take on themselves. And let me make it perfectly clear. 90% of you out there can, but it's the approach. And the approach will determine the level of frustration that you suffer. And we are going to talk about the approaches that some people make and some approaches people should make in order to alleviate it. You know, as we all know, especially since COVID, almost everything, and the green industry is no exception. Everything seems to have doubled and in some cases tripled in prices. Certain, without exception. Costs compared to pre-COVID days, and I retired right at the cusp of COVID. That's when, late 2019, 2020 is when I hung it up for actually getting out and doing the contractual work. Still design, but I don't do the contractual work anymore. But those, I don't know. Everything from food to cars to landscape supplies to everything. I don't quite understand it. But based on this, many folks are trying to curb the cost of a professional doing it for them, and they're trying to go DIY and do it themselves. And I tell you what, I applaud you. I applaud all of those who are doing so. I just hope that they have done a good deal of due diligence and education, learning, before launching on a random Saturday morning that they're going to make over their landscape. Now, I'm not talking about putting in a few perennials in the springtime, and I'm not talking about planting up your petunias in the front garden. I'm talking about a landscape makeover where you're taking it down to virtually scorched earth, maybe leaving the patio or even taking it out and redoing it, the whole thing. That was my little corner of the landscape world for many years. But that Saturday morning impulsive desire to do it is where and how frustration, friction, and I've seen that, share some of that in my book and in the course, swearing and ultimate defeat kind of creep in as you start to immerse yourself further and further into it. Here are a few frustrations that homeowners have voiced to me, and I have corrected for them over the years. Right out of the rip, cost. Going into a landscape makeover without you knowing the cost knowledge behind it and no budget that has been, shall we say, implemented or put in place can end up making a landscape project way more expensive than folks think it should be or is supposed to be. And here's the sentence that I've always heard. It's just grass. It's just plants. Why is it so expensive? Man, if I had a $100 bill. So, another thing that people do not do is they do not plan really for the makeover. It's like I said, it's that impulsive Saturday morning. They went out and had a barbecue in the weeds that they call their backyard on Thursday night, and one of them say, I'm so tired of this place, this weekend we are starting over. And although I applaud the 2-beer bravado at the barbecue, it's a whole nother thing to actually do it and have it turn out professional, shall we say, or near professional. And part of having a plan in place is you have to answer a couple of things. What are we doing, and why are we doing this? This needs to be answered in the infantile stages of planning out a landscape makeover. Yeah, you can just wing it, I guess. You can, but chances are it's going to look like you did. So sit down with your significant other or sit down in front of the mirror and say, why am I doing this? And what are we going to do? And you will find that you will not be able to answer that question right away until you put some thought into it. And these are the things that I talk about in the DIY 15-step landscape product that I sell on the website. And you should just peruse that and see if it's worth the investment of a couple of dollars. The other thing that I hear is, I don't have the equipment to do this. And although equipment is always readily available somewhere if you use a little bit of creativity, there's a few things, and I'm going to cover that in another episode, believe it or not. But not having the right equipment at the right time for the landscape application, it's going to be another thing that raises the frustration level. It really will be. If you suddenly want to take out all these mature bushes and everything, and you have a camp hatchet and a shovel, you're setting yourself up for a lot of frustration, failure, and possible injury. You really are. So you need to take a step back and go, what do I need to do this in the easiest, at my skill level right now, easiest way in order to accomplish the task in a framework type of schedule? You know, as a pro, when I came to your house, I would roll up in my 1-ton pickup, my 18-foot trailer filled with all the power equipment and hand tools and everything to do it. And with all of those things that I did have, I still went out and got some other tools, maybe something specific to the job that you asked me to do. So remember, it just doesn't work unless you have those tools. And here's another big frustration, is many times, as a lot of YouTube channels and other things have put on display, both good and bad, I might add, is you're trying to take something on by yourself or maybe with a spouse where you really need a lot more helping hands. For maybe just a short period of time, but you need the helping hands to get into that demolition phase of landscaping and breaking up a large patio or redoing a driveway or something that maybe your skill set has never focused on too much, and you get into it and you're going, OMG, what have we done? And yet when you have that support and that extra hands on site, it will make you feel so much more empowered, I promise you, that yeah, it's going to be hard. You're going to sweat, but you will get it done in half the time or 30% of the time than if you had just the two of you or just you. Another thing that I've seen frustrations-wise is people do not call 811. And they come across obstacles in a landscape makeover. Utility lines that they didn't know were buried. Weather. Weather plays a huge role in frustration when you start the landscape project at a time of year where weather is very, very influential on everything that you do outside. You have to have your eye in the sky and on your screen to get a relatively accurate weather forecast before you start breaking ground and opening things up. You want to have a good, solid couple, 3, 4, 5 days or more if you get into demolition. Okay, now the next thing, knowledge. Knowledge of how and what steps you should be taking in order to get yourself across the landscape finish line. And you're not broke, you're not broken, and everybody is happy. There's not a lawyer involved. You haven't upset utility companies, etc. And part of that is your knowledge of how to do it and your skill set and capabilities that you currently have, and you will sharpen as you go through this. So those obstacles that get in the way, huge part, which leads me to the next one. And that is your physical capabilities and your physical shape. There was a time where I would arrive at a job site sometimes at 6 in the morning, and I would just pound and grind. Now, yes, I had some power equipment, but that power equipment also needed power from me to operate it most of the time. Power trenchers and other things. And I wouldn't leave if I had to have a long day. I wouldn't leave to 4 or 5 o'clock. And we're talking working in 95 plus degree heat and stuff. That was me 15 years ago. Me today, I wouldn't take things on like that anymore because I would be putting my health at risk. At 67, you're supposedly a little smarter. And for me right now, those construction parts of things, the real hard part, are kind of in my rear view mirror to a certain extent. I can do little stuff and I can do some hard stuff, but just not for as long as I used to do it. I get out there in the summertime here at Brook and Pond, and I'll pound for the morning hours, and then I'll take a 2-hour break or more, have something to drink, have a little something to eat, and then maybe go out and pound for an hour and then give it a break and come back out in the evening and hopefully finish or continue without killing myself. And when you are not accustomed to hard physical labor, sweaty princesses need not apply to this. You have to gird your loins and know mentally what you're embarking on. You really do. And I don't say that to scare anyone. I say that to prepare everyone. When you're starting a demolition process of a landscape makeover and you get on the working end of a 60-pound electric jackhammer that you've rented from a box store or a rental yard, and you're jackhammering and you're tearing things apart and you're lifting into wheelbarrows and you're rolling out to a dumpster or a pickup truck or a dump trailer or whatever, you will know very early on whether your physical shape is ready for this kind of work. And if you can look in the mirror and tell yourself honestly, yeah, Johnny boy, you are not ready for that kind of work, hey, make that into part of your planning. That, hey, you're going to take a month and you're going to start doing some isometric exercises and stretching and a few other things. Lightweight to start with and then work up to it a little bit, because you know that the 1st of May you're launching. So you have a few months to get yourself in shape, and all that time for planning and budgeting and all the other stuff that I've talked about. But physical shape, boom, is a huge one. I have seen many a DIYer get off into it and then turn back around even the first day and have one of them go, yeah, this is not for me, I'll be inside. And now one person is left holding the chainsaw or the axe or the shovel or the jackhammer or whatever, because the other one just cashed in their chips and left. So many hands make lighter work. Better shape makes lighter work. Now here's another one, another frustration. Your removal capabilities. And this kind of dovetails in with equipment a little bit, but Do you have the capability of removing all the demo debris that's going to be coming out? Have you planned ahead, and have you either created a spot somewhere where it can go and then go into something that is coming? But I would much prefer you have rented a dump trailer, rented a dumpster, which a lot of DIYers, I suggest you look into that before you go renting a dump trailer. Do you have a pickup truck to haul a dump trailer? That's why it's kind of nice to have a dumpster. And here's another tip from me is practice, practice, practice on touching something once. Once. You cut down a branch, you cut down another branch, you drag it out, put it in the dumpster once. You don't cut it, drop it on the ground, and then create yourself a pile at the end of the day when you're hot, tired, and sweaty, and you haven't moved anything off the project surface area. Get it, move it, deposit it. You will save yourself so much time and so much energy. So remember, touch it once. But remember to get those containers or the ability to remove really early on. And if you're getting into removing patios and pavers and all the stuff that get really, really heavy, you're going to want to have a dump trailer, and you're not going to want to fill that dump trailer all the way full. Despite what advertisements are, many times dump trailers will not lift a full trailer of concrete. It's just too heavy. And remember, if you put it in the dump trailer, not to put it all the way at the very forward end of the dump trailer. Kind of like the back 2/3, and that's it. That way it'll lift it easily. Remember, if you have a dumpster, they will have rules for you that you can only fill it to the top rim of that dumpster. You can't fill it up to where it's burgeoning over the top. They will not take it. They will actually refuse it and keep charging you money until you remove it down to where the top rim of the dumpster is. So removal capabilities. And keep in mind, if you borrow your brother-in-law's pickup truck and it's a half-ton F-150, be careful hauling off a bunch of heavy concrete, because you can put a hurting. And remember, is that vehicle in good shape? Are the tires in good shape? So common sense. All right. Another one that I have walked into as a landscape professional, and that is somebody had hired the wrong person first to save a few bucks. Out in the state of California, which is my home state is no longer my state. But there you had to have a lot of things in order to practice as a licensed contractor. First of all, you had to have a license. In order to get that license, you had to demonstrate to the state that you had a good working knowledge and plenty of hours of training and experience before you could even apply to be a contractor. And then you had to take kind of a rigorous written test, and depending on what classification of contractor you are, you had to decipher and design things for the examiners. But it's not that way everywhere. It's not. In the state of Maine, where I'm at now, you don't need a license for landscaping. Anybody can do landscaping. I think the only licensing that is required, don't hold me to it, but a general contractor license, plumber, and electrician. I think that's it. Anyway, yeah, hiring the wrong person who claims to be a professional only to see when they get into it that they're sorely lacking in organization, in a plan of attack, or they have made you one of 6 jobs that they have going, so they're only there Tuesday, then you don't see them till Saturday afternoon, then you don't see them. You see what I'm saying? It can oftentimes raise the frustration bar several rungs by hiring the wrong person rather than a true landscape professional that knows what they're doing. And you should ask, what is your plan for this? You should have some form of a written contract with the person, which outlines the work that is going to be done in a relatively close period of time, and that the cost of such a job is going to cost this. So beware, buyer beware. please. Many times I have come into a situation like this where someone had hired a handyman. And this is no disparaging remarks against handy persons out there. It's not. There's a lot of good, very highly skilled handy persons that do very good work. Not always landscaping, but they do a lot of other things. And I've seen the looks in people's eyes when they see that responsibility taken off their shoulders and placed onto the professional, and then have that responsibility and that frustration come back onto their shoulders when they see that this person is just not qualified to be doing what they're doing. Oftentimes undereducated, underskilled, very poor communication, in some cases subpar employees. They get off schedule very easy. Very, like I said before, very spotty on-site performance. So ask a couple of things when you're interviewing somebody. Ask for some references. Ask for some photos. Most of the time they should always have some form of a hero book with them and the address that goes along with that work. And then check those people out. If they do have to have a license, check the license. Look for any complaints. Maybe a copy of the license, a copy of the insurance that they carry. If you're required to be bonded, a copy of the bonding card. And then watch. Does their talk and walk match? Did they show up on time for the initial consultation? If they're 20 minutes late without any sort of a phone call, that's your first red flag right there. It really is. Oftentimes I saw a lot of mow and blow guys see an easy target for some extra weekend cash. And they would reach out to me as a professional running a genuine business. And then they would reach out to their mow and blow guy, Larry, and Larry was $4,000 less than Coach, and so they'd hire Larry, only to find out that Larry's never done any irrigation work. He doesn't know anything about PSI and gallons per minute, and what size piping, and what size downsizing, what size sprinklers, and what size radius does the thing so you have great coverage. And then my phone would ring again a couple months later, and somebody's eating some humble pie asking me to come over and take a look. Anyway, just let me sum it up by saying, buyer beware. That's all I'm going to say about it. So last on this landscape makeover frustration is amount of time required. You think, sitting on the couch watching HGTV or YouTube channels, that it's going to take you 4 weekends. 4 weekends and you'll have that backyard down to scorched earth and rebuilt. But don't be surprised and don't be disappointed or frustrated if it takes you 4 months or 6 months. One of the things that happens in a landscape makeover or any construction process is a thing called momentum. Especially in landscape makeovers, momentum is huge. You get into it and you create your own momentum. And momentum is generated off of so many things. How many hands you have on hand, what kind of plan you have, what kind of design you have in place. And the momentum is attained through realistic goals, a realistic schedule, and the understanding that life, supply chain issues, injury, God forbid, and rookie mistakes will be present. So what falls back onto the mental prep is paramount to avoid some of those pitfalls. But if they arise, the only thing I can tell you is breathe. Don't break your shovel handle over your knee, and think past it and seek out the solutions that may be advice before throwing up your hands and quitting when your project looks like a bomb hit your backyard. Just remember, hey, yeah, Coach mentioned something about that. Not to get all weird and give up just because you thought 4 weekends was going to do it, and now you're looking at 4 months of weekends to do it. You may start out in freaking September, and all of a sudden you realize that, this is going to take a lot longer. Now you're off into Thanksgiving, and there's nothing available out there plants-wise, sod-wise. It's not the time of year that you start seeding a lawn, and you kind of miss the cutoff point. So now you may have to go through a whole winter with a half-done project just keep that in mind. That again, it falls back to planning and falls back to freaking breathe. Take a breath. It's only grass. It's only dirt. And guarantee you, it'll be there the following year. So you can see that there can be several frustrations that rear their devilishly ugly little heads if you have not whiteboarded it out and kind of really, I'm not saying overanalyze it to the point of paralysis, but certainly talk it out, plan it out, schedule it out, and realize that there's a certain amount of things that are going to be needed on site before you start, when you start, and at the various stages along the way so that your momentum does not get broken. The one thing that I'll have to tell you is momentum will always get broken because of weather. You have everything ripped out, you're down to scorched earth, everything is just bare dirt. And then you get 2 days of rain and have 2.5 inches of rain. You're going to have a mud pit for a few days. And just, yeah, okay, it is what it is. And it's soft and it's squishy and there's not a damn thing you can do for it. You're just going to have to wait. I did. There was many times where I needed to get out and work because I had bills to pay. I had a mortgage to take care of. And yet, damn, that's when the heavens wanted to open up and I couldn't do anything. So just understand that going into it. It's very, very important that you know that there are going to be walls that you're going to have to get through or over throughout this process. Now, if you're in a frame of mind and you want to make small investments that kind of help you stay on the right track, consider the website again. Consider doing a consultation. Consider reaching out and maybe picking up the 15-step DIY checklist. Those things that you can have in your hand as very big knowledgeable tools, including the book and the course. I mean, how much does it cost to have a licensed professional come in and consult with you throughout the course of a project? You know, at a mere $100 or more per hour from the time they leave their house, and then sitting there clicking off while they show you various things. And yet you can do it online with somebody like me and be able to talk it through one way or another and have you arrive at a plan and a direction that doesn't cost you an arm and a leg and doesn't add to the bottom line a whole bunch. So consider that. Hey, next week, we're going to be covering the last 3 frustrations. A little bit smaller, not quite such this big bulk, and we will get through that last one. And I hope you join me because it may apply to you very much as well. And I appreciate your time. If you stuck with me this long, I hope that I could get you to return next week and check out some of the other podcasts and the videos on Yard Coach on YouTube. I appreciate your time. And as always, to your landscape success. And until then, I'll say goodbye for now.